So, legendary listeners, we have the incredible Bryan Hardy here, all the way from Ontario and Canada, which seems to be a common thread with people coming on at the moment, which is really cool. He is a certified nutritional practitioner and holistic lifestyle coach who's been deeply immersed in all things holistic wellness and personal growth from a decade ago when he nearly died from a misdiagnosed ruptured appendix, and naturally was set onto this path of recovery and inner discovery. And when you're faced with something at the level of death, I guess you can take two paths and continue to go down the poor me route, or you can take Bryan's path and go, holy crap, why did this happen? And let's look into that a little bit more. So he lost his health at a super young age of about 18, which taught him how important it was and still has been to invest in wellness, and showed him how backwards our world can be at times when it comes to healthcare, especially with our knowledge around food, nutrition, and medicine. So he currently resides in Ontario in Canada with his partner, and they run an online practice helping stressed out professional men in particular burn the beat out and the mental emotional challenges that keep them stuck, exhausted, and unable to perform at their optimal level. And I think that this is such a cool approach to having a niche, Bryan, because so many men that I talk to, I think it's coming out more so and more so now that they're feeling okay to talk about their emotions, and they're feeling okay to still be in their masculine, but go, I need help. I'm burnt out and I'm doing far too much. So let's just dive right in. I would love for you to speak how you came to the men's route in particular, because I know that you were faced with, all of your health discoveries at a young age, but I'm sure that this path to helping men in particular has been a road that you've traveled along to get there.
Definitely, definitely. And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to connect and share. And yeah, for me, as I look back, it's been a very consistent thread. This of like men's work, men's groups, like all the way back from, I guess, like elementary school with my father and through the church that I was raised in. And, there was a lot of programming that would be boy and men specific. And so that was like at an early age, I had those points of connection with peers and with mentors to have fun, to talk about things that were uncomfortable to talk about, to be supported. And so I really count myself blessed that I had those examples at a young age. Um, and I haven't actually fully presenced how far back it goes until you just asked this question.
Wow.
So thank you for bringing me back, because um, most often I think about my sort of recent years, sort of like, age 20 and forward, when I'm already on the path of health, and then started to connect to different men's groups in the city of Toronto, where I was living at the time. Um, and those things for me, they just became such, and they still are, although things have obviously shifted over the last year and a bit, given the world situation. But those places are such a source of nourishment for me on a deep level that I think is like, one of the more primal forms of nourishment, which is this in-person sharing of food, sharing of time, being together. And particularly for men, we seem to be hardwired to really need that, and to go off and do things together and to go through hard things together. And that's what, in many ways bonds us. And so that was part of my own personal, mental, emotional, social health journey, and what I needed in order to feel sort of balanced and connected, and in a sense, part of me to be validated by other men. Right? They say that um, a man is only created, or a manhood rather, is bestowed on a boy from other men. And that sort of goes back into, rites of passage and initiations that all tribal peoples around the world have done and still do in some way to this day, but which us colonial, descendants have been cut off from in a big way. Um, so that's really been it. It's just seeing how there's such a need, and the idea of scratching your own itch, and using that to determine, or to like you said, niche down into who you're here to serve.
Mm,
um, and so in that space, in men's spaces, I feel very much at peace, very much at ease. Even if we're going through some challenging stuff, there's part of me that knows that I'm supported and I'm seen and I'm valued.
mm,
And it really just allows me to be myself, and to want to share, and to want to lead in whatever ways that I can, and help uplift others in whatever ways that I can. um, so that was really a big piece of the journey. And then honestly looking around and seeing how, I mean, the ladies are typically far ahead when it comes to supporting each other, giving themselves the sort of self care that they need, being open to receive that kind of support and feeling good about that.
mm.
Although I know that's not universal for all women these days. Um, but there's definitely more reluctance usually on the male side of things. And so to be able to be an example that, this is totally fine. You're not less of a man if you take care of yourself and know how to cook, and all these, kinds of things that the old paradigm of sort of masculinity might discredit or shun as too soft or too feminine or whatever it might be. Um, and I just see that you know, um, there's a real need, right? There's a real gap, and so to be able to fill that gap and to connect with guys that are on that part of the journey and need some support, um, it just feels like the most natural way to serve at this point. So that's a long way to answer a question, but it's been quite the journey.
I love long answers, and I love it coming from a space of authenticity as well, because, in the brief moments that we have chatted, I get the feeling that you are very connected to your, like, not only your partner, but your brother and your dad, who is someone that you spoke about then, who you said are very much role models in your life, and you're fortunate to have them there. But I'd be curious to know whether you've been a role model to them, or they've mentioned anything about you teaching them ways about masculinity or initiation into manhood, that you never really saw the maybe the tables turning in that way. But I'm sure just them observing the work that you do is like, wow, and you thought they were the teacher.
Yeah, yeah. No, it definitely, I mean, a lot of things started to shift, and I really started to, be more outspoken and be more passionate about, the world of health and the state of things and how things are so backwards, after having gone through my own health crisis. Um, and so, um, since then, it's really like, when you have, in a sense, nothing to lose, right? I find this with most people that have had any sort of really crisis, like life ending or like physical life ending, near death kind of experience. It
Mm,
really frees you up to go for what you want and why you're really here, because you're going to die, and this life is finite, and that, why not make the most of it? And so that for me was like a rite of passage in a sense,
mm.
not a traditional one, but it
A
it
forced one.
served a function. Yeah, it served a function to usher me into a deeper sense of responsibility, and a deeper understanding of the world and my place in it. Um, and I've been blessed that my brother, my biological brother and father, have been very open and very willing to engage and willing to, come along for the ride in many ways. And so we've been able to share, some powerful moments through these kinds of experiences and groups. um, and I have had that feedback, that they they're proud, but also, in a sense, not impressed necessarily, but yeah, that
Inspired,
just that,
maybe.
you know, yeah, and just that they see sort of, the transition in me, because I'm the youngest of my family, so they see the transitions that I've gone through and the path that I've taken. um, and they know, that things that I'm pursuing and sharing are true, right? And so they really respect that and they want to support that. um, so yeah, it's been uh, a deeply satisfying journey in that, and being able to share that. And again, I know that that is not necessarily the norm these days, to
Mhm.
have, intact families and understanding families,
Yeah.
when we are taking a path that is less traditional, or more outside of the mold. So again, um, I count myself very blessed to have had and still have that familial unit of support, um,
Mm.
and then also to, in a way, see that expanding more and more, right?
Yeah.
And see, like the idea of chosen family or soul family, coming online more and more, um, which is just really exciting. It's really exciting to see, how on a collective level we are making these transitions together, and supporting each other through that.
Absolutely. And I'd be curious to know, and I get the feeling your partner and you have been together for a while, but I would love to know if she's really observed a huge transition from you, and how you've kind of observed yourself transition, and whether you've had like deep chats about that, like you kind of before and after, but also during and still becoming, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we've been together not a huge amount of time. It'll be 3 years in June.
Mhm.
It feels like a lot more than that. Um, but I mean, at the time where we met, I was quite immersed in all of these things. The men's health
Mhm.
stuff and the men's groups, and that was definitely a core part of who I was.
Yeah.
Um, and so she could see that, and she really appreciated that, and has been so supportive, right? And really understanding that, these are the kinds of things that I need to feel balanced and nourished and connected. Um, and I think she can see how being in those spaces really allows me to come alive, and to step into a role of leadership that is not um, accessible in many
Mhm.
other instances. Um, and then it was really with her help, because part of what she does and how we work together is she has the gift, the ability to speak to the body directly or the higher self, and create or facilitate a dialogue with those deeper or higher, however you want to conceptualize it, aspects of ourselves. Um, and in a way that helps someone like me, who is more nutrition and health and lifestyle and, movement focused. I'm more of the body, right?
Mhm.
um, I'm more about the physical things, and how do we, get our physiology to really function at its optimal level. And so, as we decided to sort of join forces in our practice and complement each other in a more formal way, because for a while we would be helping each other, but in a not, formal way. So our clients didn't necessarily know that I was allowing her, using her gifts to get further insight on what's the best course of action for this individual. I would ask them for their permission, but that was about it, and then give them the results. But so, in us coming together and joining forces, um, she's able to tune in at a higher level that's not so mind dominated, to
Right.
see how much of an energetic fit is this for us both to work together, and for us to serve men and serve professional men, as our target audience, right? The people that we're here to really help.
Yeah.
And so that helped to just really validate all of these ideas and concepts, and show that, okay, it's not just that I think this is a good idea, or I even just feel that this is a good idea, although our thoughts and our feelings can be very insightful. But there's a deeper fit, both in terms of timing and the way that we complement each other, in terms of being able to bring something forward that is unique and that is truly helpful, for the people that are ready for that kind of a journey.
It's so beautiful because it really is like the head and the heart coming together. And it's not that you complete each other, you're both whole souls, but when you realize somebody's strengths and see that that isn't yours and can go, I acknowledge that I don't have to have, the best of that quality. I can actually have my partner there, and they can assist me through that as well. Because it's like you're, in a way, your own client as well, because obviously that's
Mm-hmm.
come from passion as to why you want to share. And I speak to, a lot of men like yourself, or a lot of masculine men, and a common thing that comes through is that they seem to say to me, it's like, I couldn't find my voice, or I couldn't put a word to an emotion. So I'd be really curious as how men speak to women versus when you're dealing with men on men, when you're talking directly to them, what is actually the common thread? Is there many, or is it funneling back to them feeling challenged to express their emotions?
Yeah, I think there's more of just a permission, right? In a sense that I'm not going to be judged or condemned or, made wrong. All these really deep level fears that I think a lot of us hold that keep us from sharing, those things that are more challenging.
Mhm.
Um, and so um, I definitely notice, and I always start off, I'm always the first point of contact with our clients. Um, and I think that helps set the tone that, okay, here's someone who, I can relate to, they understand my challenges as a man. And they are, clearly um, able to speak from experience, right? Which I think is really, really important. So that builds a level of trust to the point where um, when then Katya, my partner, and I are working together and interfacing together with a client, there's already that container built, right? That we're not here to judge them or to change them or to, make them wrong or, um, like therapize them. It's not like we're going to do like talk therapy and make them go through all of their like worst
Mm.
experiences,
Mhm.
because that's not the approach that we take. Um, but and it's likely also that the kinds of people that we are attracting are ready, right, to go into these kinds of areas. They've already done, usually the case is that they've already done their own amount of inner work, right? They're not coming into this like from ground zero. So there's already a built um, capacity to talk about these things, to be aware of these things, and to um, not be held captive by them. Because I think part of my journey, certainly, um, and many men that I speak to, listen to, um, it's really there's no one keeping us from expressing these things but ourselves, right? There's no actual like prison that we've been locked into. It's all self-created and self governed, right? So we reinforce these things in ourselves to not be able, right, to express certain things or to not be able to be seen as in need of help or in need of support or not necessarily having it all together, right? Attempting to wear the facade of perfection and self-assuredness and self-sufficiency, which those things are great. They can be really great in healthy doses, but taken to an extreme, which I think Western culture in general has driven a lot of us to take these things to the extreme
Right.
and internalize them. And that's where the dysfunction is created, and the separation from our true self, right, our core essence, and living from these ideas of roles or obligations, and these wearing masks to hide what's really true. So I think where the collective is at these days, there's more and more of a desire and a willingness to take off those masks, and where at least the people that we speak to and that are attracted to our work, um, they're already engaged in some form of that. Um, so it really allows for a more seamless deepening of that through our work. Um, but as you said, it's becoming very, very common, right, to have these conversations, to talk about mental health, to talk about emotional health, and to recognize that, the old idea that may have worked or may have served a temporary function for like our parents and their parents' generation, of just stuff it down and don't talk about it and just pretend everything's all right, um, that will literally kill us in one form or another, whether slowly or quickly, or through a some sort of physical manifestation of dis-ease, or through a mental emotional breakdown. Like, it's not going anywhere,
Yeah.
right? And until we really sort of make friends with it and make it okay and create the space for it, it's not going anywhere. And I think enough of us have suffered for long enough that we're willing to kind of surrender control in this aspect,
Mm.
and be open to things shifting through that surrender, which at first can seem very scary.
Has there ever been a situation, so dealing with, mental health and people in general, they're not always exposing everything that's going on with them. And sometimes they don't even know what is held within their body and held within their belief system. I'm curious to know whether you've ever had a client or a situation where you felt, maybe I'm not the person that can help you. You felt well out of your comfort zone. And if you have kind of a referral system of like teams around you, not just like Katya and yourself, it's like, do you have a team of like, hey, I've got someone better for you to go to with this stuff? Or has every case that you've handled been like, you've been able to do that just through intuitively feeling into it and with your level of expertise in the years that you've done your work?
Yeah, I definitely am, you know, very, I would say, privileged in a sense to have quite a network of professionals that I can lean on and that I can, speak to, or refer to in certain cases. Um, and certainly there are particular things where you definitely I think, need to have a team, right? If at all possible, people need to think about not so much, okay, who's this coach or who's this, whether it's a naturopath or a therapist, and they're going to fix me, right? Thinking that, okay, I'm going to go to this person, we're going to do this work, and then everything will be all right. Um, which is usually not the case. It's not usually this linear journey of, okay, go to one person and we talk about all these things, we deal with this stuff, and then everything's fine. I go back to normal living. Um, and so I always encourage people, if at all possible, to have a team and to think about developing their wellness team, right? Which could have a medical doctor, could have a psychiatrist, could have a personal trainer, could have a yoga instructor, could have a nutritionist, or someone more like myself, could have someone who works more on the soul level or is more intuitive like Katya. Um, and so definitely, there's no sort of one size fits all. And I think it's important for people to be aware that they may need different kinds of support at different times. Um, and because we are not uh, tending to attract people that are, severely, you might say, handicapped by mental conditions, like completely, non-functioning depressed or non-functioning anxious. um, those people, I think, would, if by the time we would speak with one of them, they have either stabilized themselves through natural means or through medical means or whatever it is that sort of help them to get back to kind of a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are not like the first line of what you might call like mental health first aid,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people need to be somewhat stabilized in order to dig into some of the depth, right? And so getting people
Right.
stabilized, if they're in a sort of emergency situation, is not our expertise, is not our main function. And so if I were to speak with someone who seemed like, they're very much on the edge and they need some sort of, whether it's emotional support or, nutritional support or medical intervention of some sort, even just as a temporary thing, right? A temporary tool, because I'm certainly not one to to believe that, taking prescriptions or, relying on these things is a long-term strategy for health, because in most cases it's not. But certainly temporarily they can help certain people. Um, so so yes is the short answer to, having referral systems and having people around that we can lean on. Um, and the interesting part about it is that particularly when it comes to, um, like the patterning and the beliefs and it's like, why is this situation continuing to happen in my life? Whatever that might be, for someone I'm working with currently, it's the sense of abandonment,
Mm,
right? From partners, from family, from the people that he would sort of put in that father role, and this
mm,
continual pattern of that, right? Um, and so the great part about how Katya works is that she will feel and be able to tell if, whether it's me or whether it's a client, if we're essentially bullshitting, right? And
yeah,
trying to feed her a line of what we are rationalizing we think is the problem,
yeah,
when really it could be something very different that might go back a lot further. Um, and so in a sense, she's able to function as like a lie detector, right, for the
mm,
mind and for the sort of games that the ego will play.
yeah,
Because if we're not careful, the ego will just play games all day long, forever, and we'll never really get anywhere, right? And we'll trick ourselves into thinking we're getting somewhere. And I think most of us on a quote unquote spiritual journey have experienced this and can observe this, where we think, okay, we grasp this massive insight, or we taste a piece of enlightenment or something like that, and then we assume this spiritual ego who thinks I've got it all figured out. Look at me, I'm this superior being, which is clearly, just another level of self-deception,
yeah,
and wanting to appear, better than or superior in some sense. So it gets really tricky if we don't have the tools to assess, where these things coming from and what on a soul level is actually um, ready to be dealt with,
mm,
right? And that's sort of some of the wording and some of the way that Katya functions is what's in highest priority for this individual right now, right? Because we're not going to go through everything of their whole life experience in like, a 12-week program, but there's
God,
usually something which is ready, right? Almost like ripe, like a fruit on a tree, right? What's the ripe fruit? What's the thing that we have access to, and that by engaging with is going to provide nourishment in this moment. um, so I mean, it's so, both for myself, because I was essentially, benefiting from this kind of work long before our clients were in any formal sense, right? Because we would help each other out, and we would, help, traverse the blind spots, right? And I think that's an important part of any relationship, business wise, romantic wise, life wise.
mm,
um, so I am, in a sense, the one of the first, like testimonials or examples or recipients of this kind of support,
mhm.
which really helps because I can then speak to, um, how powerfully freeing it has been. Because if anyone listening is like me, tend to, if I'm out of balance, tend to overthink things, tend to overanalyze, tend to want to control everything, tend to get anxious because of that. Um, and so to have the awareness and have the tools to catch, my mind before it goes on these really dangerous tangents, um,
Mhm.
is so freeing, and has just unlocked, a sense of energy and a sense of liberation that, in some ways is goes far beyond anything, that we might eat or drink, or, movement practices we might engage in, although those are very, very, very important and foundational and can move the needle in a huge way. If we don't address the mind, we're going to run into a wall at some point.
Absolutely. And what's really cool about your story is that, you know, you were in an emergency situation, rushed to hospital, and the people that you deal with are almost an example of how you transitioned out of hospital. So yes, there's a case for dealing with people smack bang, you need medications or you need surgery. And I'm all for hospitals for some areas, but definitely ongoing prescription wise, I would rather prescribe them to somebody like you, or to like a 12-week program that's like, hey, you're in here for this. Let's address your diet for the next 12 weeks, transitioning out of hospital. Or let's actually look at why you're stressed and you keep having mini heart attacks. Or why the hell did your appendix erupt? Like, what were you eating? What were you doing that has stressed your body out in that way? Or was it just some sort of freak accident that it's like, well, that was the moment of awakening that I needed that shift? So I think it comes at no surprise that a lot of your clients have come to you because they're looking for a way to transition their life, to make it not only just a fad diet or a quick fix. It's like, how can you help me develop a really healthy habit or routine, as well as the education and support behind that? Because how many people are dishing out information these days? There's an abundance of knowledge. You can Google anything, but it's not until we hear it from somebody that their story resonates with us, or the way that Bryan said it really made sense, because it's otherwise too technical. So I think it's a really magical thing that you're doing, and it's just cool for me to think of like men seeking you out, because yeah, I'd just love to know how you kind of build your rapport with them and get them to come in, because I imagine for a lot of them they'd still feel quite, I don't know if awkward's the word, but maybe unsure. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I mean, up until this point, the vast majority of people I've worked with have either been personal connections or referrals, or people through my network, or people who have followed my stuff online, either through, like Instagram or the podcast that I used to host. And because I try not to hold much back in
Yeah,
presenting myself, I try to really, um, as one friend put it, feature your flaws.
I love that.
And yeah, and because we've all got things that are less than ideal in our minds, at least. Um, but once we share those things, we're no longer bound by them, right? It's like holding the secret is actually what's keeping us imprisoned.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that that has been probably the most effective way to build that rapport, to build that sense of connection, is that I've practiced for many years now, um, sharing the things that I might most not want to share.
Mm,
And whether that's in a podcast conversation, or whether that's in a small group conversation, at an in-person event, or in like the retreat space. That it's by doing the thing that we give permission to others to do the thing, right? And to not
mm,
feel alone, and to not feel the shame that often keeps us so stuck, which I know was a huge part of my journey, right? Was things around shame. And so um, because I've had those examples and I've had those experiences of seeing where, oh, here's this thing that I would have been terrified to share with a group of people. And then to feel the freedom on the other side of that, right after having shared it. And this goes into concepts, um, around this whole idea of like radical honesty or radical transparency.
mhm.
And the book Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton is a fantastic resource for people who want to, um, get a deeper taste for this kind of thing, and see, in one sense, just how simple life can be if we just tell the truth, right? And we just stop pretending, and we just tell the truth, and we just share, um, what's coming up for ourselves. And of course, doing so with tact, and doing so with
Mm,
consideration for the context of wherever you are, because you don't want to be that person just going around blurting things out and saying, oh, I'm
mhm.
being radically honest, and just like, putting your shit on everybody in a
Right.
time and a place where they might not be willing to receive that.
Yes.
So definitely be, tactful and considerate with how you go about these things. But that's really it. It's about um, giving myself permission, and then through that, other people can do the same. Um, which I think ties into this whole idea, which I've loved for many years, of servant leadership. Right? How do you lead by serving,
Yeah.
and how do you instead of trying to be on a pedestal and trying to be some guru, how do you really bring yourself down to the same level as the person that you are serving or connecting with, and help them to see that we're all just human, right? And that we have so much shared, uh, because of that, and that
Mm.
there's really no reason for us to beat ourselves up and keep ourselves stuck in these patterns that are metaphorically or literally killing us, draining us, um, and really, sucking the joy out of our lives.
100%. Like just everything you said, I felt like I needed to stop myself nodding because it probably looked like she got a problem, but it's just absolutely agreeing with the way that you said it. And I think the thing that really stuck with me was not just sharing to share or just to get it out. And I know that I've been in a position where I've blurted to people and it hasn't been the right space, but I've been so desperate to say something or to be heard. And this is why I'm loving the ideas of so many more groups like this being tailored for a space to listen to somebody else, to let them tell their story, to not hug them when they cry, to just let them be in that space and go, hey, like you're working through something. Me wanting to hug you is me maybe being uncomfortable with seeing someone else upset. So, like, in a sense, they can be going through their struggle. And it also teaches the other group members to go, wow, I'm not comfortable letting someone be, or I'm not comfortable with silence, or I'm not comfortable stepping in. So, these things that you do and the groups and the men that you take on, I reckon that's not only teaching them better to be with themselves, but to be better leaders and to be better partners and children, brothers, all of the above. Like it's so, so cool, the way that you, yeah, just I guess, finding your path through the way you did. It's like, it's so cool to find that in life when so many people go, well, how did you do that? It's like, again, like you said, it's being authentic. You sit with what keeps coming back or what lesson keeps coming through. And it's like everything that's been authentic has led you to this path. And you've probably been doing it even when you're a kid, but didn't even know. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, it actually has been there all along. Like I have had this ability to connect with people in this way. It's just kind of matured, um, as you've gotten older and gone through different life experiences that have directed you more onto a purposeful path in a way to share it. So with that, like, who are your teachers, Bryan? Who have been your teachers right from the get-go, and have they stuck with you throughout this whole time, or do you have like a whole pod of mentors, role models that you draw upon for knowledge?
Just so I make sure I got it, because we were breaking up a little bit there. Um, was the question, are there people that have been that for me, and that are sort of mentors to me or teachers to me?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, who have been your mentors from the beginning? Do you have consistent mentors or teachers that are still in your life to this day, or have they dramatically changed as you've evolved as a person? And who or what are they, whether it's nature or humans?
Yeah. So there's definitely been um, some consistent figures, whether virtually or, people that I connect with in real time.
Mhm.
Um, but I find, like many things, almost like diet, you know, there's like a seasonality to what is appropriate, right? And so, like, the same way that my my drive for certain foods and certain nutrients will change on a seasonal basis. I find the same with whether it's my physical or mental or emotional or spiritual well-being, and that will resonate with different, whether it's a book or whether it's a person, it'll resonate with different sources at different times based on whatever I am personally going through.
Mm.
Um, so for a long time, there was people, and some of the listeners might know these names like Elliot Hulse, who is a strength coach and sort of a leader for men, and is for me to a large degree still, um, and someone I've learned a ton from. There was people like Paul Chek, who I actually did some of the Chek Institute training with the holistic lifestyle coaching. um, some of these now elders in a sense of this space of what is holistic health and what is strength and what does it mean to be a healthy man. So there's people like that, and then there's also people more on the emotional, mental, spiritual side, like Matt Kahn, that some people might be familiar with, who I find his messages to be very in a sense soothing, peace instilling,
Mm.
and to help again cut through some of the chaos of the mind, get back to the body. And with that, I've had both, mentors from some of the in-person groups I've been a part of, as well as sort of companions or brothers, people that I'm at a similar level with, similar point of the journey, and that we, currently I have like an accountability call once a week with one of these brothers, where
Mm.
we jump on and we share what's going on, what we're, looking to create, and what we are celebrating, and what we're being challenged by, um, and just create a sense of ongoing support and connection. Um, so, they do change and they have changed. And folks like me who are sort of voracious learners
Mm.
and, always want to be, learning something and developing. It's easy in that sense to kind of jump around. And in a sense, if you jump around too much, you might not get to the depth of any one thing. So I definitely think it's best to sort of find something that resonates and then go as deeply as you are called,
Mm.
and really work on the embodiment and integration side more than the knowledge accumulation side. Because I think that I know that the compulsive knowledge accumulation is actually one of the big drivers of distress and
Mm.
imbalance in us these days, for myself especially,
Yeah.
being a very intellectual kind of person. um, but to, in a sense, follow the breadcrumbs, right? Follow the signs, follow the synchronicities. If you hear about a teacher or a book, 3 times in a week, it's probably a good idea to check it out. um,
Totally.
and and using that as our guide in a sense, because I think that all of creation is always speaking to us in different forms and through different people and different experiences. And if we just slow down and pay attention, there's not a whole lot more to figure out, you know. In a sense, it's like that whole idea: ask and it is given, or even asking the question starts to allow you to live into the answer. um, so yeah, those are a few of the teachers, few of the mentors that have really been with me along the years, continue to be with me. um, and it is a um, sort of a seasonal, um, intuitive exploration as to what that next piece will be, to help me see the picture more clearly, or to help me come to a deeper sense of embodiment, and integration in whatever that aspect, or whatever that challenge might be.
That is really living at the essence of the flow of life, because we do ebb and flow through seasons. And if I know people who stick with the same diet, the same routine, like Monday to Friday from January to December, and it's like, and their ability also in life isn't very adaptable. And so it's like these practices of going, hey, the moon's waning now, I'm going to wind down with this, or it's a full moon, or, things that are like seeing how the tide moves and the seasons change. Oh, it's getting hotter, I'm going to slow my practice down, I'm going to try and cool my body. Oh, winter's coming. I know that I tend to stagnate. Let's change food. Let's change movement. Let's change the practice up. And I'm very much second you on changing around too much. We lack the ability to assimilate and to apply. But they're definitely, I think, 3-month bursts of, if you want to go with the seasons, like that's a pretty cool way to start. I personally have a really high need for variety. And so I do change up certain things in my day, but there's other parts of it that I always keep. So I might keep always my practice at a certain time, but the practice within it changes. Or I might keep breakfast at a particular time of the day, but the actual breakfast is a different recipe. So it doesn't, mean change one thing, change everything. It's like just make little changes along the way, or set new routines each day. And I'm a big fan of, I guess, telling people you don't have to make radical change. I'm someone who personally takes a lot of like, oh, I need to do it now. And I know there's a lot of personalities like that. It's like, it's a yes or a no. But so many people are in different situations where they have families or they have places where they can't exactly make that cut or that change. So make one small change a day. And if you think of one day as like a 0.01% change in trajectory, can you imagine over the next however many years of your life just making a positive change each day, like how differently your week will look versus 5 years, 10 years, 1 week from the day that you start that. And I think that really all comes down to mindset. If you've got the ability to tune in with your mind, then your mind and your body are going to want to work more synchronistically, not just within yourself, but within environment, with people. And that's when you do have better health. It's like, oh, I'm not even trying and I'm losing weight, or I'm not even trying and my body's sleeping better. But it's just about tuning in and, I guess, listening, taking the time to stop, listen, observe. When we're in a very consumer-driven society, we can be sitting in bed scrolling and consuming, whereas it's like, why don't you sit for 20 minutes in bed and be bored with your own thoughts versus consuming someone else's content and going, I have a million more things to think about now and a million more ideas. And it can definitely hinder action. So yeah, I've been a culprit to that at times, and know that I'm trying to work my routine of like, remember to create before you consume. It's like we don't eat a meal before it's created, right? So even if you're thinking of terms of a meal, we create it and then we consume. So yeah, it's something that I'm trying to apply. I'm going to hit you with some 3 rapid questions, and I'm going to first ask you, what was the last podcast episode that you listened to?
The last podcast that I listened to. That's a tough one for someone like me, because pretty much the main form of content that I'll consume is podcast, and it often gets jumbled in my brain, which is probably a sign that I'm listening to too many podcasts. Let me see. I can actually pull up.
You can look at it. You can cheat. It's an open book exam.
What do we got here? Okay, so it looks like I listened to an episode of Tangentially Speaking. Dr. Christopher Ryan, fantastic podcaster. He had a podcast with Rafe Kelly of Evolve, Move, Play, which is a really cool conversation. And yeah,
what
Chris
was
Ryan,
the first guy that you said?
He wrote Sex at Dawn and Civilized to Death. Rafe Kelly, Rafe.
Yep.
Last name Kelly.
And who was the other guy that
Yeah.
he was doing it with?
Dr. Christopher Ryan
Oh,
was the host of that episode.
lovely.
And
The
he's got a
last,
fantastic show. Fantastic show.
what's that called?
The show is called Tangentially Speaking.
Tangentially. What does tangentially mean?
Well, to go on a tangent is to kind of
Oh,
shoot off, right? Yeah.
yes.
I don't know if I don't think it's an actual word necessarily,
Uh-huh.
but shooting off in tangents
Yes,
is
that
that
makes
sort of his
100%.
style of conversation.
That, yes, I
Yeah.
feel like that should be my middle name. That makes
Yeah.
sense. What is your current book that you're reading, or the last book that you read?
Again, I'm the kind of person who tends to have a few of these going at once.
Yeah.
Again, I can look to the well, actually, no, I know the physical book because I do prefer physical books whenever possible. But these days, ebooks and Kindles tend to be faster. But I forget what the exact title is. I think it's called The Complete Vitamin E Book. It's
Ooh.
essentially like a textbook written by a doctor. This version is from the 70s, I think. But it is fascinating to see how much we knew about the benefits of vitamin E,
Mm.
particularly as a treatment for heart disease, a very effective treatment at that. Um, and so I've been reading that for a little while now, and it's just so revealing to see how little has changed in mainstream medicine, and how the same sort of ignore and dismiss and don't focus on the natural, safe, cheap, effective solutions is just all pervasive. And so this doctor is looking particularly at heart disease and vitamin E, and it is fascinating.
Is there a best way that our body absorbs vitamin E, like topically ingested, tablet form, powder form?
I would think the best things would be either topically as part of like a cream or an oil, as well as like a soft gel capsule or like a liquid. Um, because it is a fat soluble vitamin, you wouldn't
Mm,
necessarily want like a hard tablet,
yeah.
because who knows how they get it into that form and whether it's usable. So I like, there's like soft gels that are sunflower based, so extracts
Nice.
from sunflower, because a lot of the stuff in the market is like soy extracts,
Yeah.
or synthetic, which is obviously not ideal and not utilized very well by the body. Um, but actually, back in the day, they used to use unrefined wheat germ oil, because
Wow.
apparently wheat germ has a lot of vitamin E. I guess most germs of a grain that protect the grain and protect the fats inside
Mm,
the grain or the nut or the seed will naturally have vitamin E, because that's how nature works, right? It has all of the components together. Um, but yeah, I like the sunflower capsules. Those tend to be the easiest and really accessible. And then obviously, if eating a wide variety of foods, then
yeah.
we'll naturally have some in them as well.
What food has like a really high natural source of vitamin E, if that's something? I feel like you know a lot about nutrition and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ones I just mentioned, so sunflower, including sunflower seeds, even better, sunflower sprouts,
Ooh,
um, as well. I believe avocados have a decent amount of vitamin E.
yeah.
Almonds have a decent amount of vitamin E. Again, almonds, anything nut or seed or grain should definitely be soaked
Yeah.
before being consumed. Um, those are some of the sort of highest sources. Um, yeah.
Excellent. Cool. And the last rapid fire before we wrap it up and get all your details to give to people. What was your last Google search?
My last Google search. Oh wow. Um, hmm. I think it was actually, well, one that's coming up was how to record a podcast in Clubhouse,
Oh,
which is something I'm going to be doing shortly.
wow.
Um, Yeah. Are you familiar with Clubhouse? Are you on the
I've
app?
heard of Clubhouse. I've been meaning to get onto it. I upload my podcast via Anchor. Um, it's a free platform, so I can share that
Hmm.
with you. I'll send the link through. I've just shared it with a mate who's just switched over from a different platform that turned to being paid. But if anybody listening here is wanting to start a podcast as well, like is inspired, jump on ANCHOR anchor.com. And yeah, it's incredible. So like I know that a lot of stuff I listen to is off Spotify, and it uploads to that platform. And I think that's probably both Android and iPhone friendly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Um, yeah. So I think that was it. It was the logistics of being able to do a live conversation um, through the Clubhouse platform, as well as record that and then release that as a podcast, um, which is something
Oh,
really exciting because I had been podcasting from like 2016 to 2019, 2020,
yes.
but then took a break. And then now I'm getting ready to um, sort of rejig the concept of that, and also develop that with my partner. And um, yeah, very excited to have that piece be focused in on
Mm,
this idea of men's health, and what I'm in the working title is sort of the revitalized man, which
yes.
allows us to explore all these different things. So that should be up, and depending on when people listen to this, there'll be something along those lines that I'll
Yeah.
be sharing on the socials and various places.
Always tag me in that stuff, and I'm happy to send out your stuff to my social media. And even I love writing my blog, so I can, if you've got anything that you want to share in that kind of format, you can send stuff through, and I can upload that just to put as much of your content out there as I can. And also, just another tip, if there's no way to kind of record through Clubhouse, keep in mind that if you don't have your headphones in, you can do your Clubhouse meeting on your phone or your computer, either one. Just say you're doing Clubhouse on your computer, have your phone there to record it, or do that
Mm,
vice versa with Zoom. And just you can get the audio clipping from Zoom separate, so you can just upload that straight to whatever platform.
totally. And that's exactly what I found. That was the sort of YouTube tutorial. So you're
Oh,
on it.
cool. Yay.
Yeah.
Only I didn't Google. I'm more of a like, I'll try and figure it out. And I'm like, oh, 5 hours later, somebody probably had an
Yep.
answer to that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes. I know what that's like.
oh, it's been a pleasure chatting to you, Bryan. I feel like we will chat more and exchange more. And I'm really excited to see what you and Katya bring to the table, and like just seeing, what continues to emerge as technology gets more amazing each day. I feel like it yields new opportunities, new connections like this. So I super appreciate you jumping on board, giving your time, giving your story so authentically and honestly. And I truly believe that whoever listens to this will get benefit, whether it's whatever aspect of it, just your story, or whether it's what you offer. And maybe it's just, that connection to who you are and they don't really know why yet. But where can they find you if they want to get in contact for your work, or more personal, just to have a chat? What's the best way?
Yeah, so Instagram is a good way.
Yeah.
I'm on there at Bryan Hardy 7. That's Brian with a Y, BRYANHARD 7. The number 7. So you can find me on there. Also, my website, which also I've set up a landing page for to
Great.
just simplify things and put it all in one place. So that's burnoutrecoverynow.com. We'll bring you to my website and describe our offerings. And there's a free PDF guide there that's really looking at what does it take to start this process of revitalization, and how can we start to avoid and understand some of the biggest pitfalls that keep our energy drained and keep us feeling overwhelmed. So that's available for free over there. And then, yeah, I mean, between those two places, I'm pretty accessible. I'm also on Facebook, though, not sure how much longer and to what degree. But I am still on there, Bryan Hardy. And you can find me pretty easily. That's how we first connected.
Yeah.
So I am on there, and I do get back to people. I might not be as responsive to messages on there all
Yeah.
the time, but I do tend to get back to people. So I'm fairly accessible and would be more than happy to speak with folks that are interested or want to learn more, or just want to share where they're at.
Exactly. And I love that, we have that ability to connect. We could be, my clients could be in Australia, or the people that listen to this might be in Australia, but there's really no excuse nowadays to not be able to reach out to someone who's like, hey, he's got a similar story. Oh, he's in Canada. Don't worry about it. It's like, no, please get in contact with him. He'd be more than happy to, have a chat, see where you fit in his, whether that's in like a program that he's doing, or whether it's more so just I just want to share and blah, blah, blah. And that, can form some magical friendships that you just never would have been exposed to prior to these kinds of platforms. So thank you for, all that you've shared and just being you. And I would love to as well get in contact, or have you and your partner come on together. That would be a really cool, like almost encore episode at some point, because everyone that I've got on so far, I'm just like, oh, I just want to talk to them for ages. So I'll have to map out a regime moving forward to get people like yourself back on. So we're kind of checking in to see how, your programs are going and what's going on with you, and just generally checking in, because that sort of stuff really lights me up. And that was something that I was always really passionate about in the work that I did medically, and that I didn't really feel like I ever had that chance to do. So it's like, oh, I actually get to see the progress of people, and that just lights me up like nothing else. So yeah.
I know the feeling.
Cool. Well, we shall chat very soon, legendary Bryan. And yeah, what an awesome episode.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.